and he'll figure out how it works very quickly.
I think entrepreneurial skills come from learning hard work. I think the biggest skill of entrepreneurship for me is really learning to overcome any obstacles and be able to go forward and get that done. I mowed yards. As a kid, I had a paper route. I worked as a busboy at Denny's and Continental Inn, a couple of different restaurants there that I had done. I think my first job was selling Christmas cards.
I saw him putting on his coat. He had a coat that kind of an overcoat. And he went over and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to go sell some of these Christmas cards for the school."
I'd gone down all on this side and all on this side, so I got into all 40 houses and not sold any Christmas cards.
And he came in and all bundled up and red-faced and had not sold a single box of cards.
It wasn't but a short time I looked up and he was putting on his coat again. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going across the street and work that block down there."
And he tried to get me to go out with him again, and I said, "You know, that's it. It's too cold for me."
Got warmed up a little bit and went down across Floyd Road over here and started selling and sold the first 7 houses I stopped at.
That is a great learning experience in salesmanship. Is just because one person tells you no doesn't mean anything.
I was adopted at birth in 1955. I was 6 weeks old when my parents came and got me from an orphanage in Denver, Colorado.
Both my brother and I knew from the very beginning that we were adopted. It was that we were wanted, that we were chosen, and that we were very special.
How many months?
He was 6 weeks old.
He was 6 weeks. And she got her wish. And
I think that's the most important thing about the adoption in our household is that we knew about it from the beginning. We always felt loved.
Gives you a great feeling. Because you know that you have parents who really wanted you and worked hard to get you, and it's been a great experience for me.
a new experience for all of us, but we loved it.
I went to this church from the time my parents moved to Houston in 1956 until I quit going, which was about 16 years old, something like that. The school still looks the same. They've obviously added another church on out here, but the hallways and the classrooms and so forth, I wish we could go inside. Looks like what I remember as a kid in terms of being here. This is the core of where my life was, from thoughts on religion to thoughts on school to not learning to read to having to change schools because of education and so forth. That a lot of the core being who I am is kind of around what happened at St. Paul's and what happened in this Catholic Church.
About the third grade, I remember he had a teacher named Mrs. Green there at the Catholic Church who said, called us, I guess. And I went up and talked to Mrs. Green, and she said, I don't know what it is, Mr. Knox, but he's not getting it on the reading. And she said the Richardson Public Schools is putting in a special course for students that have a hard time reading. And so I couldn't read like other kids did, and so I felt very stupid. Well, he'd open up a book, and he'd start at the bottom, at the middle of the page, and go back and forth like that. And I said, what are they teaching you at that Catholic school?
I ended up switching, and there was a special program within the public schools they did, but then there was also a special program that they had for dyslexic kids that my parents had learned about, that had been created by these doctors Doman and Delicato, and basically it was reteaching the brain.
I was involved in a class that was held at the rec center for several children, one of whom was my brother, and our job was to help train them to move in such a manner that they were mimicking the way normal brain patterns work. We walk, swinging our arms, our left foot is out, our right arm is out, and so on. So the patterning was a crawling practice.
I think it helped. It helped because I know John needed to have glasses. We discovered that. So after he'd been doing that, the doctor that was treating him, he had bifocals, and it was exactly the opposite from the way most bifocals were. And so anyway, the doctor kept saying, well, he doesn't have any depth perception. And so then after he'd been doing the creeping and crawling exercises, the doctor discovered that he had gotten some improvement in his depth perception.
When you're 9 or 10 years old, or ever how old I was doing that, you didn't want to do it. You disliked it. My mom continued to believe that it helped me a great deal, and so through the University of Plano and some other programs there that had that, they had me engaged in doing that. The 4th grade was the only time I was really in kind of a special class that was outside of the regular schools, and then after that I was pretty much doing regular school. I was somewhat of a loner, but had a few people that I hung out with, and that was true not just in elementary school that you're asking about, but also middle school and into high school. That I would have 1 or 2 friends at different points in time that I would hang out with, but never very social, never very engaged, or the popular kid in class, so to speak. I was a little bit of a nerd, I mean, it's interesting now, my kids look at my pictures from back during those days and go, you were clearly a nerd. But and I was, and kind of felt that way. Yeah, photography was a big part of my life. I got into photography when I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and it became something that I really enjoyed. I learned how to develop film and print the pictures and do the darkroom side, and that was very enjoyable to me. And I liked working in the darkroom. You could be creative, figure out different ways and different things of doing it. I think it was photography that was really where I initially learned about business and how to run a business and how to make money, how to market, how to do that. At one point I was doing so many weddings, I wanted to cut down on the number of weddings, so I doubled my prices, and I thought I'll do fewer weddings, and all of a sudden I was the most expensive photographer in Richardson, Texas, and so people thought I was even better because I charged more, and so I ended up getting more business instead of less business. So it was a very interesting lesson in that.
He always had some money, and he wanted to work. He'd find things to work for. Well, on that, he worked on the annual at school, and we had a dark room in our house that we'd put in for him. And I remember one night I went in there about 2 o'clock in the morning. He had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And I said, why don't you go to bed? He said, I promised them that, these gals that were putting together the annual for the high school, I promised them that I would have this thing ready in the morning. And he was sitting there blowing up and had it in the, whatever, the developing water, and he had to have that picture for them at school the next morning.
I think as a kid who started off doing weddings when he was 15 years old, and his mother was having to drive him to to weddings, and to even get there, you start learning how to interact with adults. And so I learned to get along with adults as a teenager, and it was very much of a growing experience for me, and learning how to deal with people and manage that side of it was a great experience for me.
That was quite an enterprise for him to be taken care of when he was still in high school.
This is the house I grew up in.
Oh.
Right over here, 637 Downing. Back when I was a little kid, this was a huge house. I remember this room being a little black and white TV that was about this big around. This scar in the bottom of my chin was this exact step right here, right where that little mark is. On there is the scar that's on that as a kid falling and hitting my chin on that step. My sister's was the first room there. And guess whose room this was? A little smaller than I remember. This had a big bookcase over here on this wall where that was, and my bed was over in here somewhere. But this was my room.